2:30. So we need to make sure that we end at least a couple of minutes early or a minute early or something and get out of the room so they can come in and set up. Okay. So with that, this is the note well. You know, hopefully you have seen this many times here, but it is important to put it up in front of everything. You know, there are a number of things that are touched on here, not just what it means to make a public contribution and the fact that that can be used by the IETF and IETF process, but there's a code of conduct in here, you know, issues about the process, expectations on people, and of course our privacy policy. And so please, if you have not, you know, please make sure to take the time to review that material so that, you know, we can all be working together as a team here to make the internet a better place, right? Oh, I probably should have started off by saying also that I am James Galvin, one of the co-chairs. Antoine Verschuren is with us in the Meet Echo up there at the top. He is the other co-chair. We were doing the sound check with him just a minute ago so that we know that it all works. And so with that, this is a document review request. I've always kind of put this up here. This is just something we've been doing here in this group. We're a relatively small group and a small group of people, you know, self-selected, and we have actually been having some issues trying to keep up with document shepherds and you know, moving documents along. And so I just think, you know, in the IETF context in general, it's useful to keep in mind that, you know, the IETF is larger than just this working group. So in addition to please paying attention to documents in your working group and taking the time to comment and actually read them and support them or not, as the case may be, you know, please do reach out and take a look at documents in other working groups. And equally, feel free to ask others to come and look at your documents. We have had 2 meetings here at this IETF, session 1, session 2. This is our normal regular working group meeting. We had a work session yesterday for a couple hours, and we'll get a brief summary of each of the documents that was talked about at that session. So let's jump right in here to our agenda and formally start the meeting. As usual, we need our Jabber and Note Scribe. And look around, can I get any volunteers to do Jabber and notes for us, please? Somebody? Oh, it's not usually this hard, but. In the middle of the screen. Hit that. Okay. Fair enough. I was trying to expand the slide to be itself on the full screen, but you're right. Okay, so that's better. That's fine. Really, I know that we usually don't really want to reach out and tag somebody to get the regular people, but we really do need a Jabber scribe and somebody just to take notes. You'll do the, that's right, you're sitting in the seat. I should have assigned it to you because you were sitting there. That's right. Thanks, Wendy. Somebody to take some notes for us, please. I'll look in the, yeah, it's a short meeting, guys. Really could use somebody just to take some notes, you know, just a quick summary of actions, grab the agenda, and if we make any comments about anything. Really? Okay, Rick, thank you very much. Appreciate it, Rick Wilhelm. Okay, we've already done the note well, so let's jump right into the charter update. This slide actually shows on it the change in the charter that has been put on the mailing list. We've gone through working group last call, and it has been submitted to our area director. The last 2 paragraphs under the old were replaced by the 1 sentence there that you see under new, for those who haven't seen that before. There were a couple of issues that were talked about on the mailing list with respect to this. You know, people in general were worried about this group having too broad a scope and, you know, likely to take on more things than it really can do. And the response, you know, the explanation that I had given on the mailing list, and I'll just highlight here, is there is that key, you know, phrase there in the middle of the sentence at the bottom, in consultation with its responsible area director. So the idea here is to try not to add too many words defining exactly what we may or may not do. We do want to try to use the phrase, related to the operation of internet identifier registries, whatever those might do. We're believing that that includes both RDAP and EPP, and it allows us to get into some of the operations and standardizing certain activities that those registries would take on. And of course, we would always have to make that with the responsible area director. So the escape clause, if you will, is the area director has to agree. So we always have an opportunity to make sure that we don't have a lot of scope creep and doesn't just slip in because we want it. Okay, I'm told by the area director that our charter is on the next telechat, and I'll let Adam speak for himself.
So, Adam Roach, it's not technically on the telechat yet. I'm going to look at it very closely, make certain I might socialize with a couple people first, but I hope to put it on the next telechat, which is August 2nd.
Okay, thank you. Apologize for that confusion. But that should, the expectation is that if all of that proceeds without incident, then we'll be well prepared to pick up some of the new work items that we have pending in our queue. Okay, document management. This is just another opportunity for Antoine and I just to reach out and appeal to people, please to help us out with respect to document shepherding. We actually have a couple of documents that are pending a document shepherd right now. And I know that it is a process. There's really just a form that you fill out, and then you have to manage all the comments that the ISG produces as they react to the document. Once it's submitted in, we look for the document shepherd to manage that. And the important thing is the document shepherd cannot be a current document author or editor. So you need someone that's independent from all of that. And I don't know, Antoine, if you wanted to add anything to that, if you jump in the queue there, I'll let you. Otherwise, I'll just move on here. Okay, so we'll move on then to existing document status. We have lots of document status this time. I think that this 3-month period has probably been one of our most productive here. A lot of things seem to have come to conclusion and moved on. So that's been a good thing. So we're going to go through 4 categories of things here. In terms of items in ISG last call, the top 2 are actually in ISG last call. They're in the ISG queue, and they're just waiting to come out. And Adam wants to step up. Please, go ahead.
Adam Roach. So just as the RDAP object tag, and this probably happened after you made the slide, that is now on the upcoming telechat as well. So we'll be balloting on that August 2nd as well.
Okay, good. Thank you. So these documents will move along. Most important here is that they're kind of out of our queue. That's what got them onto the slide labeled IETF last call. They are off of our list, which means the milestones list has already been updated too, so they don't have them. The last 2, the organizational mapping and the EPP extension for the organization, they're down here in italics. I put them on this slide because they've been submitted to the ISG, but they haven't moved further than having been handed to the area director for the next step in the process. But having done that, they get to get off of our milestone list, and so they've been adjusted in that way. Okay, I'm going to move along through these, except for a couple that I know we need to talk about, unless someone wants to jump up at the mic, and we can go back if I move past something that you wanted. Documents that are past working group last call but have not actually been submitted up. So the first one up here is the bundling registration. It's targeted for being submitted for an informational document. It's the one which is pending a document shepherd. So we really are very interested in someone who's willing to step up and help us along here and be the document shepherd for this and just move this document along. If anyone is interested in doing that, certainly appreciate your raising your hand or saying so on the mailing list, or please come up and see me at the end of this meeting. The change poll document is just waiting for its document shepherd write-up. And the last one is the registry fee extension. And I think it is past working group last call, but a technical issue came up when the document shepherd was doing their write-up. And which one of you is going to stand up? You're going to do that, James? Okay. Whichever you would like. I think if you're here, you can be more. So James Gould is going to talk a little bit about that and the meeting and discussion we had earlier today, as well as on the mailing list in the recent past, trying to resolve where to go with this document. Go to the other one, I guess.
Hello? Huh? Okay.
Much better.
Yeah. So a group of us met earlier today, and there was a group from VeriSign, from Affiliates, from GoDaddy, and there was also Patrick on the remotely logged in. So what we did was we discussed the particular topic of the standard attribute. And in doing the review of the mailing list, I identified the specific comments on the list. And when I was going through the review, it looked like there was not a consensus at the time. So that's why I brought it up. We discussed it, and the net result of this was the fact that we felt like it was in line with the data model of the system and in line with the protocol itself. And that adding this attribute really didn't fundamentally change the behavior at all. So the recommendation at this point was to move the standard attribute from the command, which was incorrect, to the response. As I was doing the review, it was identified it was actually in the wrong place. So we need to fix that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to post a message to the list with the notes from the meeting, and then Roger will follow up with an update to the draft. And that's it.
Okay, and what will happen there is we'll end up with version 12, I think, of that draft at that time, and we will essentially immediately, well, as soon as the write-up is finished, then we'll just immediately submit that to the ISG to move that along. This has been one of our most dramatic documents. We've spent probably far more technical time on this document than many others. So I think it's quite a milestone in our work products here to move this document along. Please.
Scott Hollenbeck. Jim, if I may, I would caution, though, that we shouldn't assume that we should be able to move this document to the IESG once it's updated. Given that this decision is just going to be described to the mailing list, it is possible that someone on the list may object, may suggest an alternative. And so I think we do need a little bit of time to ensure that we have consensus on the approach, and that it doesn't warrant either continued discussion or another working group last call or something, right?
So thank you for that. I'll let Wendy go before I comment.
Yes, thank you. Antoine from the Jabber room saying, yes, we need another working group last call.
Yeah, I see that's my co-chair saying that. My co-chair and I may need to sync up a little bit here. Fair point, Scott, and I didn't mean to extend beyond that. Implicit, and let me just make it explicit so everyone's clear. We're not trying to overtake the discussion, but the consent, what we decided in our discussions today is we were trying to figure out whether this was a technical error in the specification, an oversight at some point in time that we missed. And in any case, as always in the IETF, all final decisions are made on the mailing list. So there's always that possibility. And in particular, Pat Maroney, although we did our best to represent and talk about his position in all of this, in fairness, he was not part of the discussion this morning when we were trying to figure out what to do. We do think that we have a decision and a choice which meets everyone's needs and also honors and respects the protocol as it should be. So we're not making a technical change. We had an oversight in not having completed a change to the schema when we had a discussion 7 months ago, and it got into the document, and it wasn't until the document shepherd was doing their particularly thorough review in this case that they identified what was going on. But as in fairness, you're right. We will post all of this on the mailing list and make it clear what happened. This, of course, will be documented in a proper way by the document shepherd when we go to submit the document up, and we'll allow some time for discussion on the mailing list, just in case somebody wants to bring something up that we might have missed. But ideally, we're hoping that there won't be any issue there. we've tried to cover all of the issues that we knew about and all the questions that we had. So, but thank you for that. Okay, moving along quickly again here. So there are other documents that are listed we have other documents listed in our working group list of documents, and there are 2 other documents which are still on our milestones list that I want to call out that we need to make reference to here. Okay, so the ones in italics here on this slide, the second and the fourth one, are actually not on the milestone list. They are documents that are still in the working group that we have not progressed and have not moved forward. Now, case of the TMCH functional specification, that has a technical issue on the ICANN side that we're waiting to be resolved. So that document is officially parked for right now. And you know, we're hoping that we're going to get some resolution on the other side so that we can incorporate that into this document and then move that one along. The verification code extension we've just kind of ignored for a while. We haven't tried to progress that or move it forward. So, and we have not actually even proposed a time frame for when we want to pick that up. So that's a decision that we'll have to come to as we look at other work items to take on. We need a decision on what to do with this one. Now, the other 2 documents, third-party DNS operator and the validate mapping, we have actually had some discussion about those, but we have not chosen to pick those to move along. I know the editors of the DNS operator document really do want to move that document along. They have some issues to address, and they need to revive that document and revise it, and then put it back up on our priority list so that we can close on that document. The validate document, and I'm thinking I'm drawing a blank here. I'm actually forgetting now after having put all this together. Yes, Roger, thank you. Help me out there.
Actually, this is Roger Carney. We met, I'm going to say a month ago. I can't remember exactly. Had an interim meeting, and we were going to cover the validate and the registry mapping, but we got stuck on the validate. So it was actually a very productive meeting. We do have quite a few changes coming out of that. And there's been some, I'll say, very few suggestions on list so far since the meeting. But we do have a handful, I would say probably 6 fairly good modifications to it that are coming in the next few weeks. So,
Okay, good. So work is progressing there. So that's a good thing. Okay. All right, moving on. New work items. We've had multiple presentations over the couple of years that we've been in existence about potential work items. These are 3 that stand out right now as being recently proposed, and they seem to have more energy. So this is not necessarily intended to be an exhaustive list of things that might come to us, but I wanted to highlight them and make them visible for new work items. And I guess, James, you actually had a couple of slides here for the login one. And let me... And there we go.
Okay, great. So yeah, I posted this extension recently, and there's been some dialogue on the list. So I want to go to the next slide. Yeah. So the problems that this particular extension addresses is, first off, extending the maximum password length past 16 characters, which is in the RFC today. The second problem is the fact that there's no capability in EPP today to return back errors and warnings, security errors and warnings to the client. Examples include password expiry, certificate expiry, insecure ciphers or TLS protocols. The other one is providing user agent information from the client. In essence, that way the server can help identify potential security issues or functional issues to inform the client in the response. So with that, the extension was posted, and the intent is to fix those particular problems. Go to the next slide, please. So I cover each of the problems. So the first one is to extend the password past 16 characters. The way this works is that it extends the login command. Since the RFC requires a password of 6 to 16 characters, a constant value is used there. In essence, in brackets, login-security. That informs the server to look into the extension. And in essence, the client can continue to use passwords as they do today. So it's forward, or I guess it's backward compatible. And then the login extension will allow for passwords beyond 16 characters. So what happens is that the new elements in the extension will support a minimum length of 6, which matches what's in the RC, and it has an undefined maximum so that we could have it move forward as security standards change. The next slide. And here's an example. Very straightforward. So in essence, you can see here that the constants are in the base, and then that's telling the server to look in the extension, and there's a longer password. It's very straightforward. The next one is a little bit more complex, but very useful. In essence, the server will be able to return back security events, and it could be a list of them, to the client. And the only time this extension is included is first off the unhandled namespace issue. If the client includes that extension in the login services, and there's at least one event. So go to the next slide. So these are the attributes of the security events. You have a type, and there's a set of predefined, whether it's password, certificate, cipher. There's also a statistical item as well, like for example, a certain number of failed logins within a certain duration, and then custom for extensibility. And there's a warning and error level. In essence, an error should result in a failed login. You can have an expiration date for things like password expiry, certificate expiry, and there are some additional attributes here for statistics, which would be a value and duration. And there's a free form description. Go to the next one, and we'll see an example. There's an example of a password that is going to expire. So in essence, it's a warning. The authentication, in fact, worked, but this provides the client with information that they need to change the password. Next. Here's an example of a scenario where the password has expired. So therefore, it's an authentication error. And the reason why it's an error is because the password is, in fact, expired. Keep going. Okay, and then we have the user agent information. I got to tell you, it's very difficult on the server to identify what clients will be impacted by certain things. So without having the user agent information, we can't make those calls. So this extension will allow for the client to include the user agent information in the login command itself. So move to the next slide. Here's an example of it. So in essence, in the extension, it just has the user agent information, which includes an SDK using Java on the Mac. And that's pretty much it. So we did have some feedback on the list. Some of those folks really wanted to broaden this to consider other authentication methods. Right now, it's very limited. So I'd be looking for any suggestions about how to specifically do that, if that is the case. There's comments around the use of the constant value. We also had dialogue related to setting of the minimum password length, and we agreed to use the ROC length of 6 as the minimum. And there was also discussions related to the XML schema type to use for the password, and we pretty much just reused what was in the RFC. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, this extension solves the 3 problems by extending the login command to address the password length, address the user agents, and in the response, we will provide back the security warnings and errors. So I highly suggest that you go ahead and review it and provide any feedback. All feedback is welcome.
Okay, wait a minute. And we have someone in MeetEcho, so let me, Alexander?
Hi, everyone.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry, Alexander, we're not really hearing you.
Okay. I was.
Okay, put it in the chat. Okay, that's much better. While he's doing that, please go ahead.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay. Stefan Bartmeyer, AFNIC. Actually, for the problem of this additional authentication method, the suggestion on the mailing list was to not to reinvent the wheel by ourselves, but to reuse a well-known framework, SASL. I cannot say that I like SASL or even that I understand it, but I'm certain that when it comes to security, it's almost always a bad idea to redo it yourself. So it's probably better to simply refer to something which is well known and established in the IETF.
Okay, I see James taking notes. That was good. And oh, there it is. Let me read out what he wrote in the chat room here. I like this draft and was only wondering whether those features can be used independently. So can I use the security warning mechanism with the standard passwords?
Yeah, they can. In essence, the inclusion of the user agent information they're all completely separate. Yeah, I mean, you can choose to do them separately, but I would highly recommend that at least support the password length change.
Perfect.
Okay, and we heard perfect from Alexander, so that's perfect. Okay. All right, good. Thank you, James. And going on, I think that's it for those. So before we move into the other thing, I want to talk a little bit about next steps. I just realized we didn't put a slot on here for talking about what's happening next. What we have been focused on quite dramatically this year in particular over the last 12 months since last summer, and been especially successful in closing the loop here on a number of things, is to clear our milestone list and the number of documents that we have on our docket. We've been kind of moving things along kind of slowly, and it's been really helpful to suddenly come to closure on a number of things and really close that loop recently. So with the charter update, it opens the opportunity for us to take on some additional documents. We do have some other work items. We have already been talking about registry mapping, for example, and it's not currently on our list. We now have the login document, and we're going to have, and we have some new work items here. I just feel like there's a work item here we didn't talk about. Did I? Yeah, I skipped over the escrow stuff, didn't I? I went right past that. Okay, we'll come back to that in a moment. And we have the escrow stuff. We'll give Gustavo a chance to come back and remind us of that and speak to that stuff too. So we have a number of pending things that have been out there, and we will try to move these along in the mailing list. The critical thing at the moment is to continue to complete the couple of documents that are very close and all but published. We have a number that are right there, and we're just going to about done with that. We also need our charter update, so we need to get past that with the ISG and our area director, and hopefully that'll be successful. So I suspect that leading in to the next IETF meeting, we will have opportunities on the mailing list, and we'll be reaching out to talk about working group adoption on some new work items, and we'll need to prioritize them and then update our milestone list accordingly. Okay, so we've been doing a good job here lately of getting things off our milestone list. It is now down to just having the couple of things open that we've already reviewed and I mentioned. Everything else has been shuttled off and had its state change so that we know where it is. And that's been a good thing. So I guess I just wanted to call that out for people. Watch for some notes on the list about the charter update, the last couple of documents to move on, and then we'll start bringing some new documents in formally into the working group and move them along. So and I'll let Gustavo come up now. And if folks want to comment on that or say anything about that, let me give Gustavo a chance first to talk about the data escrow documents and see what he wants to say there. And then we'll take questions and comments about anything from anyone. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, Gustavo Lozano, I can. So those, of those three documents, in reality, the first one was the first version, and then it was split into the other two. So we can forget about the first one. But the other two are the documents that I would like in the work group to adopt at some point in time. So in the GTLD space, we have this process called data escrow. So basically all GTLDs are required to create this deposit with some data elements from the SRS database, and they put this information into a data escrow agent. And then the agent can release the deposit if certain conditions arise. So those documents are heavily used in the GTLD space. They are used by GTLDs, data escrow agents, Ibero providers. They have been used several times for doing transitions, and they are used on a daily basis. The documents are pretty stable now. They are not expired, so they are current. And they have already an implementation section, so you can go and see which entities have implemented these documents. So that's it. I mean, those are the two documents that I would like in the future this group work group to adopt.
I'll add, speaking for myself, not as chair, that just to emphasize something that Gustavo had said. These documents are pretty stable. Most GTLD registries are already doing this and they're using them. So I would hope that these documents probably represent a couple of work items we can progress rather quickly, unless there's an issue which pops up. And now Roger's going to tell me about something I missed, right?
No, this is Roger. No, I actually haven't read these, so I'll go back and read them. But are they stable in the sense of all the changes in data privacy recently?
Yeah, they were updated recently to accommodate all the data privacy things.
Okay. Yes, please, Scott, go ahead.
Scott Hollenbeck. Gustavo, are these practices being used outside of the GTLD space at all in the CCTLD community? And here's where I'm coming with that, right? In the past, when we've looked at either protocols or practices that are unique to a particular community, a particular company, a particular vendor, the practice has typically been to publish them as informational, right? They don't necessarily represent an industry standard. If these practices were being used in the CCTLD community as well, I'd feel much more comfortable with saying, yeah, I mean, I see these as a broad industry practice, a broad potential standard for the industry. But if not, it might be worth describing them as something like, the ICANN recommendation for data escrow or something like that. I mean, we can have this debate when we start talking about adopting the documents and what the intended status is, blah, blah, blah. But if you do know of implementation outside the ICANN community, I think that'd be some very interesting information to share.
Thank you, Scott. That's a very good question. So I'm hopeful that Gustavo can see if he can get some of that information and have that available when it comes time to talk about it. And I'll stay back here. Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, Rick Wilhelm VeriSign. As Roger's point about the privacy things for those that don't wallow in ICANN and its processes very often, things related to ICANN's efforts to adopt the temporary specification and turn into a more formal policy are still very much in flux. And it is entirely possible that the escrow provisions might be changed by, because that's all still unlitigated, to the application of the GDPR, which just went into effect on May 25th, has all not really been tested in court. It's only getting its first test right now in German court. So the point is that they have been stable. I think they've been technically stable for a while, but we might see some change due to things that are outside of our technical control.
Yes, a lot of moving parts in the privacy space. We'll just have to track that as best we can. Okay, next up on the agenda is work session summaries. As I had indicated before, we did have a working session yesterday, 2 hours. We had 3 topics that came up, and we'll now take a few minutes and give everybody a chance who are the leaders of those topic sessions to give a short summary and open for any questions that you might want to ask. So hang out for a moment afterwards and see what kind of questions we get. So Roger Carney, you're up first.
This is Roger. Yeah, so we met yesterday. We went over the overview for those that are new to it, those that ignored it, those that purposely forgot it. We still went over the overview. We went through all the discussion points that came out of the last meeting, as well as all the discussion points on the list. We talked through all those things, and I know that we have several items that we'll be updating, and several items that we still need to discuss on list prior to updating. But it was a good discussion yesterday. We will be trying to meet fairly regularly for the next few months to progress this along as quickly as we can. We'll let the list know as soon as we know anything about future meetings. But yeah, we do plan on meeting and getting an update to this rather soon. So,
let me make a comment and then ask a question of you before you go away. And anyone else who has a question, please do stand up. Just to put a little bit of context here, this is a work item that's been kind of an ad hoc, volunteer work item. It's not formally a part of the working group, although we had always intended to take it on. And it is kind of a substantial piece of work. And so Roger's been kind of going forward with that. And we've used the mailing list for some discussion about it. And all of that's okay. The purpose of this mailing list is for any topics related to registries and internet identifier systems. So I don't think it's out of scope, at least for discussions. But did want to draw a line on that. Could you say a few words about the context of registry mapping? What problem is it solving, and why we're doing it?
sure. A brief overview.
Yes.
It's
And I ask
actually,
for that because this room is larger than is typical for us, and we have at least twice as many people as usual here. So just for the benefit of those in the room who might not have heard this before and been tracking too carefully.
you bet. And I'm from GoDaddy, so a registrar that has onboarded a few TLDs. And if you're on the other side, if you're a registry, you know how painful it is. We send out a 30 to 40 page questionnaire for every TLD we onboard. It has 300 plus questions on it. It's to answer all the questions in the numerous RFCs that say may or shall or optional, all those things that a registry gets a choice on. As a registrar, we need to know what those choices were. So, and that's where the 300 questions come from. We need to know what every one of those things are. One of the big difficulties out of it, and why we kind of wanted to bring it to EPP or some other mechanism, is consistent naming. Every registry calls a certain parameter a different name. So even with the 300 specific questions we ask, we get back responses like yes to something that we were expecting text back on. So it's one of those things where it typically can take 6 weeks for us to bring on somebody to answer all these questions. And it's not 6 weeks of work, but it's 6 weeks of process time that we had to wait through. The goal here is hopefully we can get 80% of those things done in 5 minutes, just a response to this, and we're done with 80% of those questions, and then we can work on the remaining 20% that we need to. So that's the pain that we have and what we're hoping to solve.
Thank you. And I'm not seeing anyone jumping up for the microphone, so I guess that's it for that. Thanks. I expect that particular work item to be one of the early ones that we seek to adopt once we have the opportunity to take on some new work. Okay, unhandled namespaces, Jim Gould.
Yeah, so just to clarify the particular topic here, the issue is in the registries, there's a message queue for the clients, and these are well-structured messages. And the fact of the matter is that when the clients connect, they specify what services they support. There may be an instance where the message has a extension that the client does not support. So the question was, what should the server do? And then there was a question around what is the intent within the RFCs themselves. So we described the problem. We talked about 3 different options to address it, which in essence is we do nothing. The RFC allows for the server to return things that the client does not support, or there is a problem and it's not big enough to do anything about, or it is a problem and that we should do something about it and come up with a common solution. So what we did was we had a lot of discussion related to alternatives to actually coming up with a solution. There's an example of returning an error with message queue information. There's a discussion on creating a filtered queue, which it only has messages that the client supports, providing a priority queue, which will, in essence, only return the messages that they support first, and then after that, it will return an error. Another one that we said was to be able to reformat the poll message, so therefore it is protocol compliant, but will still provide the information to the client for later processing. So the result of this was that it was clear that there is a problem from a protocol perspective. Many agree that the protocol should not, or the server should not return back extensions that the client does not support. The question was coming down to whether or not this is a policy decision or a technical one. With that, with those three options, it looked like there was more support for this being a problem, but there's not a need for a solution for it. But with that, I believe the next step is for me and Martin to create an internet draft, at least define what the solution that we proposed. It would be up to the working group whether or not to take this on. But I believe it is a problem. I believe it needs to be fixed, and we will go ahead and create an internet draft to define that. So that's it.
Thank you. We had quite a vigorous discussion about this issue yesterday and last night, continuing into the evening. Go ahead, Roger.
This Roger. And I agree with Jim. I think that there is the identification of a potential problem there on the server side. I'm not sure how big of a problem it is, and I think it's a good idea if Jim wants to take it on, that he documents what the problem is and what possible solutions there are. Again, I'm not sure that it's a priority thing. Definitely wouldn't bump up on my list of work items to look at. So just my 2 cents.
So I agree. And speaking for myself, I guess my real challenge in the discussion about it all was whether or not this represents a problem or not. It's certainly a question, and we can examine whether or not things are set up in a way that the right thing is happening or not. But that was my pushback at the time. But we'll save that for future discussion about it all as we settle on it. So, okay, I'm not seeing anyone else jumping up to the microphone, so I guess there's no other questions from folks. That's fine. So Francisco, want to tell us he talked yesterday a bit about RDAP search capabilities and authentication. And, please go ahead.
Do you have my slide? No.
Oh, you want me to put that up?
If not, I can just look at here. I have mine. It's fine.
Only takes a moment. That's the beauty of this thing here.
Hello, everyone. This is Francisco Arias from ICANN. I sent one with the summary. Anyway, it's fine.
Oh, you sent a summary with slide.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
sorry.
fine.
No,
It's okay.
that'll take an extra minute, but you'll probably
Sure.
be done by then. Go ahead.
So a few things came up yesterday on this session. Well, I guess I first should explain quickly what this is about for those that were not there yesterday. So RDAP has some limited search capabilities defined in RFC 7482. One of the co-authors of the RFC yesterday described it as, I think, short of a real specification that was defined last minute that needs serious improvement. But the motivation for this, to doing this now, is because as part of the ICANN effort on GDPR compliance, there is a temporary specification that was defined to deal with this. And one of the things that is defined in the temp spec, although some people contend that, is that there is a requirement to offer RDAP searchability, and there are specific requirements on that regard.
So one of the suggestions from yesterday was to move the searches to use regular expressions, as has been proposed by Scott and others. There is already a draft on this regard. There was also the point raised that we need to do a serious review for internationalization to make sure that the searches work correctly, since we will be dealing with data that is not just ASCII, since we will be talking about fields like a context name, for example. What else? There were some concerns about the resources that will be used on the server side and the mechanics to deliver potentially large result sets on this regard. Mario Lofredo pointed out that there is already a draft or a couple drafts from him that deal with this topic. So there is potentially a solution there for this. There was also a suggestion that maybe there is a better mechanism to solve this problem, the underlying problem that is trying to be solved, although I don't recall a specific suggestion on how to go about this one. It was also pointed out that this is an evolving topic, just as Rick mentioned before, regarding privacy, at least on the ICANN side. On the GTLE side, this is something that is still sort of a moving target. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Comments or questions from anyone? I guess just speaking for myself, I saw this as, this is a space that needs some better structure and better specification. In the last round of GTLDs in the ICANN world, there was some comments about how to support search and what you needed and how it applied to everything. But I think we have an opportunity here to really step back and look at this from a technical point of view and really think about what is the right thing to do and the right way to provide that, so that the policy considerations have something to build on, something more, a good foundation on which to build. So I look forward to having the opportunity to have a discussion about the searching issues and what that really means in general to RDAP services and RDAP-based services. And no comments from anyone else? Okay. Oh, wrong set of slides. Got to go back over here. Okay, that was the end of the working group session, and that brings us down to any other business. Yay. We've actually given people back. We're just about at 20 after the hour. So, that gets us to a little bit of an early place, which is nice, a few minutes early. Anybody have any comments about anything at all? Anything we've talked about, haven't talked about? Something you want to talk about? Open door. And if not, I think, again, I want to thank people for keeping up. We've had quite a productive year this year in finally closing the loop on a number of documents. So, thanks again for that. And let's see if we can keep our energy going as we move into new work items. So thanks, everyone. And we'll see you on the mailing list. That's it. I guess we're adjourned is the official phrase that should be stated at least once. Thanks to Wendy and Rick for Jabber and for minutes.
So for the Teams image draft, there was this question.
Yeah. There's this issue of how comparisons go back and check the details again. That's what
Well, yeah, I think
yeah.
this round,
Oh, yes. Oh, that's right. I have to actually get up. So we got 10 minutes. Right? So we ended. That's fine. I'm sorry. So I'm going to pack up while we go. Yeah. If it was, then yeah, please. If I have missed tracking something, then please. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate the
No problem.
appreciate the help. Assistance. I guess what I would suggest is, yeah, you start by talking to Patrick, making sure that it is resolved.